Marcus woke at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before his usual alarm, his body clock still programmed for the relentless schedule that had defined his life for the past decade. But instead of reaching for his phone to check overnight market reports from Tokyo, he found himself staring at the ceiling of his penthouse bedroom, thinking about two tiny girls who were probably waking up hungry in a hospital room across the city. For the first time in years, the Asian markets felt irrelevant. He showered quickly, choosing a casual navy sweater over his usual tailored suits. Somehow formal business attire seemed wrong for meeting his daughters as their father rather than a stranger in a hallway. The irony wasn't lost on him that he owned dozens of $1,000 suits but had no idea what a father wore to visit his newborn children. His phone buzzed insistently on the marble countertop. Patricia, probably with the overnight crisis reports that used to send him into strategic planning mode before his first cup of coffee. Instead, Marcus found himself scrolling past work emails to find Sophia's contact information, his thumb hovering over her number. Too early to call. She'd been up all night with the babies, probably finally getting some rest. But the urge to hear her voice, to confirm that yesterday hadn't been an elaborate dream, was overwhelming. Another buzz. This time it was his mother. "Good morning, Daddy. Ready for day one?" Despite everything, Marcus smiled. Even recovering from a serious accident, Eleanor Steele had retained her sharp wit and perfect timing. He typed back, terrified. "But ready." "Good. Terror means you understand the stakes. Pick me up at 10. We're going shopping." Shopping for what? Everything two babies need that their mother was too proud to accept help buying. Car seats, cribs, clothes, toys. The works. Marcus stared at the message, reality settling over him like a cold wave. He was going to be responsible for two human beings who couldn't even hold up their own heads yet. They would need everything, not just the obvious things like diapers and formula, but car seats that met safety standards, cribs that converted to toddler beds, educational toys that would stimulate their developing minds. The logistics were staggering. The emotional weight was even heavier. His coffee maker hissed and gurgled, filling his kitchen with the rich aroma that usually signaled the start of another day of conquest. But today Marcus found himself thinking about different kinds of investments, college funds and trust accounts, not for tax purposes or estate planning, but because he wanted his daughters to have every opportunity, every advantage, every dream within reach. By 9 o'clock he'd delegated his morning meetings to his CFO, postponed 2 conference calls, and instructed Patricia to clear his calendar for the entire day. The look of shock on his assistant's face when he'd called to give these instructions had been almost comical. "Sir, the Yamamoto meeting has been planned for 6 months, Patricia had protested. "They're flying in from Tokyo specifically to meet with you. Then they can meet with Richardson. He knows the deal as well as I do." "But sir, this is a $2.4 billion acquisition." "Patricia," Marcus had interrupted gently, "I have 2 daughters who are less than 48 hours old. The Yamamoto deal will survive one more day. My relationship with my children might not." The silence on the other end of the line had been telling. In 7 years of working together, Patricia had never heard Marcus prioritize anything over business. He could practically hear her mental recalibration as she tried to adjust to this new version of her boss. Now, sitting in morning traffic on his way to pick up his mother, Marcus felt the familiar pull of anxiety that came with unfinished business. His phone showed 17 missed calls, 43 unread emails, and a text from his CFO that simply read, "What the hell is going on?" The old Marcus would have pulled over to take the calls, would have spent the drive barking orders and putting out fires. The new Marcus, the father Marcus, turned off his phone and focused on the road ahead. Eleanor was waiting in the lobby of her building, dressed in her finest shopping attire despite the obvious discomfort of moving with bruised ribs. She'd somehow managed to look like a woman preparing to meet her granddaughters rather than someone who'd nearly died 2 days ago. "You look nervous," she observed as Marcus helped her into the passenger seat. "I am nervous. What if I'm terrible at this? What if I can't figure out what they need?" Eleanor adjusted her seatbelt with careful movements. "Marcus, dear, parenting isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to learn, to make mistakes, to get up at 3 in the morning when they're crying and have no idea why." That doesn't sound reassuring. It's not supposed to be. If raising children was easy, we wouldn't end up with such interesting adults. Their first stop was Bergdorf Goodman's Children's Department, where Eleanor proceeded to select items with the precision of a military operation. Cashmere blankets soft enough for newborn skin. Organic cotton onesies in every conceivable size. A collection of toys that looked more like modern art than playthings. "Mom, this is getting expensive," Marcus observed as the salesperson rang up their purchases. Eleanor gave him a look that could have frozen the Hudson River. Marcus Alexander Steele, you are worth $47 billion. Your daughters are not going to wear polyester. The car seat store was more challenging. Marcus found himself overwhelmed by safety ratings, installation requirements, and weight limits. The salesperson, a patient woman with 3 children of her own, walked them through the options with the kind of expertise that made Marcus realize how much he didn't know. 4 twins, you'll want these models, she explained, demonstrating the proper installation technique. They're rated for premature babies, which is important since twins are often born early, and they convert as the children grow. Marcus watched her hands as she adjusted straps and checked angles, trying to memorize every detail. This wasn't like learning a new software system or mastering a financial instrument. This was about keeping his daughters safe, and the weight of that responsibility was crushing and exhilarating at the same time. Would you like us to install them in your vehicle? The salesperson asked. Yes, Marcus said immediately. And can you show me how to do it myself? Multiple times? By noon, Marcus's Range Rover looked like a mobile nursery. The trunk was filled with purchases, the back seat contained 2 properly installed car seats, and Eleanor was looking smugly satisfied with their morning's work. Now, she announced, we go to the hospital. Visiting hours don't start until. We're not visiting, dear. We're picking up our girls and bringing them home. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Home? To where? To your apartment, of course. Sophia can't possibly manage twins in that tiny Brooklyn place, and the babies need proper space to grow. Mom, Sophia hasn't agreed to. Then we'll convince her. With logic and practicality and the understanding that sometimes accepting help isn't about pride, it's about what's best for the children. The hospital corridor felt different in daylight, busier, more clinical, less intimate than the quiet nighttime space where Marcus had first held his daughters. He carried an armload of packages while Eleanor walked beside him with determined elegance, every inch the successful businesswoman despite her recent brush with death. Room 314 was a hive of activity. Sophia was dressed in street clothes, jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes look luminous, while Dr. Morrison helped her pack the few belongings she'd accumulated during her stay. Both babies were awake and alert in their hospital bassinets, making the soft sounds that Marcus was already learning to love. Marcus, Eleanor. Sophia looked genuinely happy to see them, though Marcus caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes when she noticed the packages. You didn't have to. Of course we did, Eleanor interrupted, moving directly to the babies with the confidence of a woman accustomed to getting what she wanted. How are my granddaughters this morning? James Morrison looked up from folding baby blankets, his expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Steele. You're looking well for someone who was in the ICU 2 days ago. It takes more than a car accident to slow down a Steele, Eleanor replied with characteristic directness. Dr. Morrison, I assume you're helping Sophia with discharge preparations? Just making sure everything's ready for the transition home, James said, but Marcus caught the slight emphasis on home, and wondered if there was more to the man's involvement than Sophia had indicated. About that, Eleanor said, settling into the room's single chair as if she owned it, we need to discuss living arrangements. Sophia stiffened. Eleanor, I appreciate your concern, but I have everything arranged. My apartment may be small, but it's a 3rd-floor walk-up with no elevator, no doorman, and barely enough room for 1 crib, let alone 2, Eleanor interrupted gently but firmly. Sophia, dear, I'm not questioning your independence or your capability. I'm talking about practicality. Marcus watched the exchange with growing tension. He'd seen his mother in negotiation mode before, had witnessed her ability to dismantle opposition with surgical precision. But this wasn't a business deal. This was about his family, his relationship with Sophia, and the fragile trust he was trying to rebuild. What are you proposing? Sophia asked, her voice carefully controlled. Marcus has a penthouse with 4 bedrooms, 3 of which are currently empty. Elevator access, doorman security, and enough space for the girls to grow up comfortably. You could have your own suite, complete privacy, and help when you need it. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could see the war playing out on Sophia's face, pride versus practicality, independence versus the needs of her daughters, the desire to accept help versus the fear of becoming dependent on the man who'd already broken her heart once. That's very generous, James said carefully, but Sophia has support in Brooklyn. Friends, colleagues, a pediatrician she trusts. Uprooting her entire life might not be the best solution. Marcus felt a surge of irritation at James's interference, but before he could respond, one of the babies, Grace, he thought, began to fuss. Sophia moved to pick her up, but Marcus was closer. "May I?" he asked, and at Sophia's nod, he lifted his daughter from the bassinet. Grace settled immediately against his chest, her tiny fist curling around his finger with that instinctive grip that went straight to his heart. The room fell quiet as everyone watched this moment of connection between father and daughter. "She knows you," Sophia said softly, wonder in her voice. "Do you think so? Babies recognize their parents' voices, their heartbeats. She heard you talking last night." Sophia's expression softened as she watched Marcus with their daughter. "She feels safe with you." The words hit Marcus with unexpected force. Safe. This tiny, perfect human being felt safe in his arms, trusted him instinctively despite his complete lack of experience. The responsibility was overwhelming, but so was the love that surged through him as Grace made contented baby sounds against his chest. "About the living arrangements," Marcus said carefully, not wanting to break the spell of the moment, "it's not about you needing help, Sophia. It's about me needing to be close to them. To learn how to be their father." "Marcus, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. I know I gave up that right when I let fear drive me away from our marriage. But these are my daughters too, and I want to be more than a weekend visitor or a man who shows up for birthdays and holidays." Eleanor, the baby, began to cry from her bassinet, the sound cutting through the emotional tension in the room. Sophia moved to pick her up, but James was already there, lifting the baby with practiced ease. "She's probably hungry," he said, settling Eleanor into the crook of his arm with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. Her schedule's been consistent since birth, every 3 hours like clockwork. Marcus felt a stab of jealousy watching another man handle his daughter so naturally. James Morrison knew his baby's schedules, their patterns, their needs in a way that Marcus didn't. The man had been there for their first feedings, their first baths, their first everything, while Marcus had been obliviously conducting business as usual. "How long have you been helping with them?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Since they were born," James replied matter-of-factly. "Sophia needed support, and I promised Michael I'd look after his sister." "That's very dedicated of you." The men's eyes met across the hospital room, and Marcus recognized the challenge in James's gaze. This wasn't just about honoring a promise to a dead friend. James cared about Sophia and the babies in a way that went beyond obligation. The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. "James has been wonderful," Sophia said, either oblivious to the undercurrent of tension or choosing to ignore it. "I couldn't have managed without him." Eleanor, the grandmother, cleared her throat with pointed authority. "While I'm sure Dr. Morrison's help has been invaluable, the girl's father is here now. Perhaps it's time to discuss how we move forward as a family." The emphasis on family was unmistakable, and Marcus saw James's jaw tighten slightly. But before anyone could respond, a nurse entered with discharge papers and instructions. "Dr. Chin? We're ready to process your discharge. Do you have transportation arranged?" "I do," Sophia said, glancing between Marcus and James. "Dr. Morrison was going to drive us home." "Actually," Marcus interjected, "I have car seats installed. Professional installation, safety certified. And my driver can follow us to make sure everyone gets home safely." It was a reasonable offer, practical and considerate. But Marcus could see the conflict in Sophia's eyes. Accepting his help meant acknowledging his role as the baby's father, meant taking the first step toward the complicated future they'd all have to navigate. "That makes sense," Eleanor said with the authority of someone accustomed to having her suggestions treated as decisions. "Dr. Morrison, perhaps you could follow us? Make sure Sophia gets settled?" James nodded stiffly. "Of course." The next hour passed in a blur of medical instructions, paperwork, and the complex choreography of moving 2 newborns from hospital to car. Marcus found himself fumbling with diaper bags and blankets while James efficiently managed the practical details with the ease of experience. The car seats that had seemed so straightforward in the store became sources of anxiety in practice. Marcus checked and rechecked the straps, the angles, the installation, while Sophia placed their daughters in the seats with gentle competence. "They look so small," Marcus murmured, watching Grace's tiny face disappear into the padding of her car seat. "They're perfect size for their gestational age," Sophia assured him. "Healthy and strong." The drive to Brooklyn Heights was the longest 23 minutes of Marcus's life. Every turn, every red light, every other car on the road represented a potential threat to his precious cargo. He found himself driving with the cautious precision of someone transporting nuclear materials, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he maintained a steady, conservative speed. "Marcus, Sophia said softly from the passenger seat. You can go faster than 25 miles per hour. The speed limit is 30. I'm being careful. Eleanor laughed from the back seat, where she'd insisted on sitting between the car seats like a protective grandmother guardian. Your father drove exactly the same way when we brought you home from the hospital. Took us an hour to go 12 blocks. Sophia's apartment building was everything Eleanor had described. A classic Brooklyn brownstone with narrow stairs and no elevator. Marcus looked at the 3 flights of stairs they'd have to navigate with 2 babies, car seats, and all the associated equipment, and felt his protective instincts surge. This isn't going to work, he said as they parked outside the building. Marcus, I've been living here for 2 years. I can manage. Not with twins, you can't. What happens when they're older and you need to take them out? How do you carry 2 car seats down 3 flights of stairs by yourself? James pulled up behind them in his sedan, and Marcus watched the other man survey the building with obvious concern. At least they agreed on something. Sophia's apartment was charming in the way that small spaces could be when lovingly arranged. Exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, large windows that let in plenty of natural light. But it was also clearly designed for one person, with a compact kitchen, a single bedroom, and a living area that had been partially converted into a nursery. One crib sat against the far wall, surrounded by carefully organized baby supplies. One crib for 2 babies. Where was the second baby going to sleep? Eleanor asked, her voice carefully neutral. I ordered another crib, Sophia said defensively. It's being delivered this week. And the babies can share for now, they're used to being close together. Marcus looked around the space, trying to imagine 2 growing children here. There was nowhere for them to play, no room for the toys and equipment they'd need as they developed. The single bathroom would be a nightmare during potty training years. The kitchen was too small for the high chairs, baby gates, and general chaos that came with toddlers. It's lovely, Eleanor said diplomatically, but perhaps temporary. Before Sophia could respond, both babies began crying simultaneously, the tired, hungry wails of newborns who'd been through too much stimulation. Sophia immediately moved toward the crib, but James was already there, efficiently organizing bottles and supplies. Marcus felt like an outsider in his own daughter's lives, watching the practiced choreography between Sophia and James while he stood uselessly by with expensive purchases and good intentions. These people knew his children's needs, their schedules, their preferences, while he couldn't even tell which baby was which when they were crying. Can I help? He asked, feeling foolish and desperate. Grab the diaper bag, Sophia called over the crying. And the bottles from the fridge. Marcus found himself fumbling through unfamiliar tasks while James and Sophia worked with seamless efficiency. By the time both babies were fed and settled, Marcus felt exhausted and humbled by how much he had to learn. This is harder than running a corporation, he admitted, settling onto Sophia's small sofa with Grace sleeping in his arms. Different skill set, James observed, adjusting Eleanor's blanket with practiced ease. But you'll learn. There was something in the other man's tone, not quite dismissive but not entirely encouraging either. Marcus realized that James wasn't just protective of Sophia and the babies. He was genuinely uncertain whether Marcus had the staying power for the daily grind of parenthood. I will learn, Marcus said firmly. Whatever it takes. Eleanor, the grandmother, had been unusually quiet during the feeding process, but Marcus could see her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the cramped apartment, the single crib, the obvious challenges of raising twins in such a small space. Sophia dear, she said finally, might I suggest a compromise? Both Sophia and Marcus looked at her with interest. What if you and the girls stayed with Marcus temporarily? Just until you've recovered from delivery, established feeding routines, and figured out the practical aspects of managing twins. You could keep this apartment, maintain your independence, but give yourself, and the babies, the space and support you need during these crucial first months. It was a diplomatic solution, acknowledging Sophia's independence while addressing the practical challenges they all could see. Marcus held his breath, hoping she'd consider it. I don't know, Sophia said slowly. It feels like accepting charity. It's not charity, Marcus said quietly. It's family. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and fear. They weren't a family yet, not really. They were 2 people who'd loved and lost each other, now connected by the profound bond of shared children. But maybe family was something they could build, day by day, choice by choice. Think about it, Eleanor urged gently. Just think about what would be best for Eleanor and Grace. Before Sophia could respond, Marcus's phone rang. Patricia's name appeared on the screen, and he declined the call without hesitation. It rang again immediately. You should take it, Sophia said. It might be important. Marcus looked at his daughters, Grace sleeping peacefully in his arms, Eleanor making soft sounds as James held her, and felt a clarity he'd never experienced before. It's not more important than this, he said, turning off the phone completely. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone in the room. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Steele had chosen family over business, presence over profit, love over the relentless pursuit of more. Well, Eleanor said with obvious satisfaction, that's a start. 3 days later, Marcus found himself standing in his penthouse kitchen at 5:30 a.m., attempting to prepare formula bottles while simultaneously researching the optimal temperature for infant feeding on his laptop. The marble countertops that had once showcased expensive wine and gourmet cheese now held an array of baby bottles, sterilizing equipment, and a printed feeding schedule that Sophia had given him the night before. The transformation of his life was so complete, so sudden, that he sometimes felt like he was living in someone else's reality. Sophia had agreed to the temporary arrangement, though her conditions had been specific and non-negotiable. Separate bedrooms, shared responsibilities, and the understanding that this was about the baby's needs, not a romantic reconciliation. She'd moved into his guest suite with the efficiency of someone accustomed to making the best of difficult situations, while the twins had taken over what had once been Marcus's home office. The nursery that had materialized overnight was a testament to Eleanor's organizational skills and unlimited budget. 2 matching cribs with organic cotton mattresses, a changing station that looked more like fine furniture than baby equipment, and enough clothes to outfit a small army of infants. Everything was perfect, tasteful, and utterly foreign to Marcus's previous life. You're up early, Sophia's voice came from behind him, soft with sleep and gentle amusement. Marcus turned to find her in the kitchen doorway, wearing pajama pants and one of his old Columbia t-shirts that she'd apparently found in the guest room closet. Her hair was tousled from sleep, and she looked impossibly young and beautiful in the morning light streaming through his floor-to-ceiling windows. They'll be hungry soon, he explained, holding up a bottle. I wanted to be ready. Sophia moved to the coffee maker, a routine they'd established over the past few days, and Marcus caught the faint scent of her shampoo as she passed. Some things about her hadn't changed. She still made coffee exactly the same way, still moved through morning routines with sleepy grace, still managed to look gorgeous without any effort. How did you know what time they'd wake up? She asked, pressing buttons on the espresso machine with practiced ease. I've been tracking their patterns. Eleanor wakes up every 3 hours and 14 minutes on average. Grace is less predictable, but usually follows her sister's lead within 15 minutes. Sophia turned to stare at him, coffee forgotten. You've been tracking their patterns? Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I made a spreadsheet. Feeding times, sleep duration, diaper changes, growth measurements. I thought if I could understand their rhythms, I could be more helpful. The silence stretched between them until Marcus was certain he'd revealed himself as either obsessive or completely clueless about normal parenting. Then Sophia began to laugh, not mockingly but with genuine delight. You made a spreadsheet for our 3-day-old daughters? It seemed logical, Marcus said defensively. Data analysis is one of my strengths. Marcus, Sophia said, still smiling, you can't optimize babies like a business process. They're not predictable algorithms. But patterns help. If I know when they're likely to be hungry or tired, I can anticipate their needs. Sophia's expression softened as she watched him test the temperature of formula on his wrist, a technique he'd researched extensively and practiced repeatedly. You're really trying, aren't you? Of course I'm trying. They're my daughters. No, I mean really trying. Not just showing up when it's convenient, but actually learning, actually changing your life for them. Marcus met her eyes across the kitchen. I told you I would. Did you think I was lying? I thought you meant it when you said it. But meaning something and sustaining it are different things. Especially for someone who's been used to having other people handle the details. Before Marcus could respond, the soft sounds of waking babies drifted from the nursery. Both parents moved simultaneously toward the sound, their temporary truce in the face of their daughter's needs. The nursery was bathed in soft morning light, both cribs positioned to catch the sunrise. Eleanor was awake and alert, making the soft sounds that Marcus had learned meant she was content but would be hungry soon. Grace was still sleeping, but her face was scrunched in the expression that usually preceded crying. Good morning, sweetheart, Sophia murmured, lifting Eleanor from her crib. Did you sleep well? Marcus moved to Grace's crib just as she began to fuss. Good morning, Grace, he said softly, following Sophia's example. Daddy's here. The The word felt strange in his mouth, too big and unfamiliar. But Grace settled at his voice, her tiny face relaxing as he lifted her. The trust in that simple gesture, the way she molded against his chest as if she belonged there, never failed to overwhelm him. They settled into the feeding routine they'd developed. Sophia in the nursery's comfortable chair with Eleanor, Marcus on the small sofa with Grace, both babies taking their bottles with the focused intensity that marked their most peaceful moments. "Your mother called yesterday," Sophia said as Eleanor nursed. "She wants to take the girls shopping." "For what?" "They already have enough clothes for the next 2 years. Toys apparently. Educational development items. She's been researching infant stimulation techniques." Marcus smiled, imagining his formidable mother poring over child development books with the same intensity she'd once brought to hostile takeover strategies. "She's excited about being a grandmother. She's good with them. Natural." They fell into comfortable silence, the kind of easy domesticity that Marcus remembered from their marriage. These early morning moments had become his favorites. The world still quiet, his daughters content, Sophia relaxed and unguarded. It was almost possible to pretend they were a normal family dealing with normal new parent challenges. "Marcus," Sophia said suddenly, "we need to talk about the future." The peaceful bubble burst immediately. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, recognizing the tone that had preceded their most serious conversations during their marriage. "What about the future?" "This arrangement. It's working for now, but it can't be permanent. The girls and I can't live here indefinitely." "Why not?" Sophia looked at him with surprise. "Because this isn't real, Marcus. We're not a couple, we're not married, we're just two people sharing childcare responsibilities. It feels real to me. That's the problem." Sophia's voice was soft but firm. "It's too easy to fall back into old patterns, to pretend that nothing's changed since we were married. But everything has changed. We're different people now with different priorities and different fears." Marcus adjusted Grace's position, using the movement to buy time while he processed Sophia's words. She was right, of course. They couldn't pretend that proximity equaled reconciliation, that shared parenting meant they'd solved the fundamental problems that had destroyed their marriage. "What are you proposing?" "I think we should set a timeline. Maybe a month to get the girls established, figure out routines, make sure they're healthy and thriving. Then I'll find a proper apartment, somewhere bigger than Brooklyn, but not dependent on your generosity." "And then what?" "We become weekend parents who pass the girls back and forth. We become co-parents who put our daughters' needs first, even when it's inconvenient or complicated." Marcus looked down at Grace, who had finished her bottle and was making the soft sounds that meant she needed to be burped. The thought of not seeing her every morning, not being there for every feeding and diaper change, was physically painful. "I don't want to be a part-time father, Sophia. I don't want you to be either. But I also can't pretend that we're something we're not just because it's easier or more convenient." Before Marcus could respond, the doorbell rang, an unusual sound at 6:30 in the morning. He transferred Grace to Sophia and went to check the security monitor, frowning when he saw James Morrison standing in his lobby. "It's James?" he called to Sophia. "Did you know he was coming?" "No," Sophia replied, but Marcus caught the slight tension in her voice that suggested this wasn't entirely unexpected. Marcus buzzed James up, then waited by the elevator with growing unease. The other man's early morning visit felt deliberately timed, as if he'd been waiting for an opportunity to speak with Sophia privately. James emerged from the elevator carrying coffee and what looked like medical papers. He was dressed for the hospital, his scrubs visible beneath his winter coat. "Sorry for the early visit," James said, though he didn't sound particularly sorry. "I wanted to catch Sophia before I started surgery, and I brought her test results from yesterday's appointment." Marcus felt another stab of jealousy. James had accompanied Sophia to her follow-up appointment, had been the one to hear firsthand about her recovery progress while Marcus sat in board meetings he could have easily delegated. "How is she?" Marcus asked, leading James toward the nursery. "Healing well. No complications, good progress. She should be cleared for normal activities within the week." Normal activities. Marcus wondered if that included the possibility of Sophia returning to work, resuming her surgical schedule, rebuilding the independent life she'd been living before the twins arrived. They found Sophia in the nursery, both babies now awake and alert in their cribs. She looked up when James entered, and Marcus didn't miss the way her face lit up with genuine warmth. "James? You didn't have to come all the way here." "I was worried about you," James said simply, offering her the coffee. "And I wanted to make sure you're not pushing yourself too hard." Marcus watched the easy intimacy between them, The way James automatically checked the babies while talking to Sophia, the way Sophia accepted his concern without defensiveness. This was what he'd been competing against. Not just another man's romantic interest, but a genuine care and support that had been earned through months of presence and reliability. The test results look good, James continued, handing Sophia the papers. Dr. Martinez wants to see you again next week, but everything's progressing normally. Thank you for picking these up, Sophia said, scanning the documents. I know you're busy with your own patients. Never too busy for family. The word hung in the air like a challenge. James had called Sophia family, not just a friend he was helping, but someone he considered part of his inner circle. The presumption rankled Marcus, but he couldn't argue with the accuracy. James had been there when Marcus hadn't, had earned his place in this makeshift family through consistency and care. Actually, James continued, I wanted to talk to you about something. Dr. Hassan offered me a position at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. Department head, significant salary increase, opportunity to develop new pediatric surgical techniques. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. If James moved to Philadelphia, that would remove one complication from their already complex situation. But Sophia's expression showed obvious distress at the news. Philadelphia? James, that's wonderful for your career, but it would mean leaving you and the girls. I know. James looked directly at Marcus. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it. I promised Michael I'd look after his sister, but maybe it's time for someone else to take over that responsibility. The challenge was unmistakable. James was essentially asking whether Marcus was prepared to be the support system that Sophia needed, whether he could be trusted with the well-being of the woman and children James had been protecting. You don't need my permission to take a job, Marcus said carefully. No, but I need to know that Sophia and the girls will be taken care of. Really taken care of, not just financially supported but emotionally cared for. Eleanor chose that moment to begin crying, the sound cutting through the tension in the room. Sophia moved to pick her up, but Marcus was closer. May I? He asked, and at Sophia's nod, he lifted his daughter from her crib. Eleanor settled immediately against his chest, her cries subsiding as he began the gentle swaying motion he'd learned over the past few days. The simple act of soothing his daughter felt like a statement, a demonstration of his commitment and capability. She trusts you, James observed, and Marcus caught the note of surprise in his voice. She's my daughter. Of course she trusts me. Trust isn't automatic even between parents and children. It has to be earned. Marcus met James's gaze over Eleanor's head. Then I'll keep earning it. Every day for the rest of their lives. James nodded slowly as if Marcus had passed some sort of test. The position in Philadelphia is a good opportunity. But I won't take it if Sophia needs me here. That's not your decision to make, Sophia interjected, shifting Grace to her shoulder for burping. James, this is your career we're talking about. You can't put your life on hold because of my situation. Michael asked me to. Michael asked you to look after me, not to sacrifice your own future. And you have looked after me. You've been incredible, more than I had any right to ask for. But I can't be the reason you pass up an opportunity like this. Marcus watched the interaction with growing understanding. James's devotion to Sophia wasn't just about honoring a promise to her dead brother, it was about his own feelings for her, feelings he'd probably never expressed but that colored every interaction. What if you didn't have to choose? Marcus said suddenly. Both Sophia and James looked at him with surprise. What do you mean? Sophia asked. Marcus took a breath, an idea forming that felt both generous and strategic. I have medical facilities, research labs. What if we could create a position here that matches what Philadelphia is offering? You could develop new techniques, head your own department, have the career advancement you want without having to leave. James frowned. Marcus, I appreciate the offer, but I don't want charity. It's not charity. I've been looking to expand Steel Industries' healthcare division. We could use someone with your expertise and vision. This would be a legitimate business proposition. Sophia looked between the two men, clearly recognizing the subtext of their exchange. James, you should consider the Philadelphia offer on its merits, not based on what's convenient for me. And you should have the support you need while raising twins, James replied. I promised your brother? You promised my brother you'd look after me until I could look after myself. Well, I can. I have Marcus now, whether that's as a co-parent or... She trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. As what? Marcus asked quietly, still holding Eleanor. Sophia met his eyes, and he saw the uncertainty there, the war between hope and self-protection. I don't know yet. That's what we need to figure out. James looked at his watch. I need to get to the hospital. Sophia, think about what you really want, not what you think you should want. And Marcus, he turned to face him directly, take care of them. All of them. Because if you hurt her again, career opportunity or no career opportunity, you'll answer to me. After James left, the nursery fell into an uncomfortable silence. Both babies had settled into their morning alert period, content to be held while they looked around with the unfocused curiosity of newborns. He's in love with you, Marcus said finally. Sophia didn't deny it. I know. And how do you feel about that? Sophia was quiet for a long moment, adjusting Grace's blanket with careful precision. James is a good man. He's been incredibly supportive and he cares about me and the girls. But he's not you. The admission came out so softly that Marcus almost missed it. He's not the father of my children, he's not the man I married, he's not the person I built dreams with before everything fell apart. Marcus felt his heart start racing. Sophia. Don't, she said quickly. Don't read too much into that. Loving someone and being able to trust them are different things. I loved you when I filed for divorce, Marcus. Love was never our problem. Then what was? Sophia looked at him directly, her green eyes serious and sad. Fear. Your fear of commitment, of vulnerability, of putting anything before your ambition. My fear of never being enough, of always coming second to your work, of raising children who would grow up feeling like they were obligations rather than gifts. Eleanor made a soft sound against Marcus's chest, and he looked down at her perfect face, her tiny features that were becoming more distinct each day. The thought of this little girl ever feeling like an obligation, like something that kept him from more important things, was physically painful. I was an idiot, he said quietly. You were scared. We both were. But Marcus, being scared again doesn't make the problems go away. We can't fix our past by pretending it didn't happen. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed insistently from the kitchen. Then again. And again. You should check that, Sophia said. It might be your mother. Marcus reluctantly transferred Eleanor to her crib and went to retrieve his phone. 17 missed calls from Patricia, 12 from his CFO, and a text that made his blood run cold. Shanghai deal collapsed. Yamamoto pulled out. Board meeting emergency session 9 a.m. Where are you? The familiar surge of adrenaline hit him, the crisis management instinct that had driven his success for 15 years. The Shanghai deal represented 18 months of negotiations and a potential profit of $2.4 billion. Losing it would be a significant blow to steel industry's expansion plans and his credibility with the board. What is it? Sophia asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway. Work crisis. Major deal fell through, board wants an emergency meeting. Sophia nodded, her expression carefully neutral. You should go. I should stay. The girls need their morning routine, and you shouldn't be handling both of them alone yet. Marcus, it's okay. I managed twins for 9 months before you knew they existed. I can handle a few hours. But that was exactly the problem. Sophia had managed alone because she'd had to, because he hadn't been there. Now he was here, committed to being present, and the first major business crisis was pulling him away. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Sophia said softly, reading his internal struggle. The moment work calls, everything else becomes secondary. That's not true. Isn't it? You're standing there calculating whether you can afford to miss this meeting, whether the deal is worth more than being here with your daughters. Marcus wanted to deny it, but she was right. Part of his mind was already running through alternatives, trying to figure out how to salvage the Shanghai situation while maintaining his newfound commitment to family. Go, Sophia said firmly. Handle your crisis. The girls and I will be fine. Sophia. Go, Marcus. But when you come back, we're going to have a serious conversation about what this arrangement actually means and whether it's sustainable. Marcus looked at his phone, then at the nursery where his daughters were probably wondering where their father had gone, then at Sophia's face, disappointed but not surprised, as if she'd been expecting this moment from the beginning. I'll be back by noon, he promised. Will you? Or will the crisis meeting lead to damage control calls, which lead to emergency strategy sessions, which lead to another late night at the office? The accuracy of her prediction was devastating because they both knew she was right. One crisis always led to another in his world, and putting out fires had been his default mode for so long that he wasn't sure he knew how to operate any other way. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Balance everything, be present for them and still run the company effectively. That's the first honest thing you've said since you found out about the girls, Sophia replied. And it's the conversation we should have had 3 years ago, before we destroyed our marriage trying to figure it out. Marcus's phone rang again. Patricia, undoubtedly with more details about the crisis, more urgency to add to the mounting pressure. Answer it, Sophia said. But Marcus, when you make your choice about how to handle this, remember that your daughters are watching. They won't understand why Daddy left this morning, but they'll remember that he did. The weight of that statement, the knowledge that his children would form their understanding of his priorities based on moments like this, was crushing. But so was the weight of responsibility to the thousands of employees who depended on Steel Industries, the investors who trusted his judgment, the legacy he'd spent 15 years building. Marcus answered the phone. Marcus, thank God. Patricia's voice was tight with stress. The board is furious. Yamamoto's people are claiming we were unprepared for the final negotiations, that you seemed distracted and uncommitted during the last video conference. I was committed, Marcus said, though he remembered the meeting she was referring to, the one where he'd been checking his watch, thinking about Sophia's doctor's appointment, wondering if the babies were sleeping well. They need you here. Now. Richardson tried to salvage things, but they want to deal directly with you or they're walking away permanently. Marcus looked toward the nursery, where he could hear Sophia talking softly to the babies, probably explaining that Daddy had to go to work. The sound of her voice, patient, loving, tinged with disappointment, made his chest tight. Tell them I'll be there in an hour, he said finally. Thank you. I've already called the car. After hanging up, Marcus stood in his kitchen for a long moment, surrounded by baby bottles and feeding schedules and all the evidence of the life he was trying to build. Through the window he could see the city waking up. Other people heading to jobs that mattered, other fathers choosing between ambition and family, other men trying to figure out how to be everything to everyone. He found Sophia in the nursery, sitting in the comfortable chair with both babies somehow balanced in her arms. She looked up when he entered, and he saw resignation in her eyes. How long will you be gone? I don't know. The board meeting, then probably damage control calls, strategy sessions. Maybe all day. Sophia nodded, as if this was exactly what she'd expected. The girls will be fine. I'll call your mother if I need help. Sophia, I'm sorry. I know this isn't. Don't apologize, Marcus. This is who you are. This is what you chose to build, and you can't walk away from it just because you have children now. Yes, I can. I want to. Do you? Or do you want to? Sophia's voice was gentle but relentless. Because there's a difference between wishing you could be a different person and actually being willing to change. Marcus didn't have an answer for that. He kissed both babies goodbye, their soft hair and sweet scent making him ache with the desire to stay. He kissed Sophia's forehead, a gesture that felt both natural and presumptuous. We'll talk when I get back, he promised. Yes, Sophia agreed. We will. The emergency board meeting was exactly as brutal as Marcus had anticipated. 12 stone-faced executives sat around the conference table that had once felt like his throne room, their expressions ranging from disappointed to openly hostile. The Shanghai deal had been Marcus's initiative, his strategy, his responsibility. Its failure reflected directly on his leadership at a time when Steel Industries was under increasing pressure from competitors and economic uncertainty. Gentlemen, Marcus began, standing at the head of the table with the confidence that had carried him through 1,000 similar meetings. I understand your concerns about the Yamamoto situation. Let me assure you that this setback, while significant, is not insurmountable. Not insurmountable? Board member Richard Hartwell leaned forward, his silver eyebrows raised in incredulous challenge. Marcus, this was an 18-month negotiation representing our entire expansion strategy for the Asian markets. Yamamoto Industries has now moved their partnership to Chin Corporation, taking with them access to manufacturing facilities we desperately need. We can explore alternative partnerships. With whom? Another board member, Sarah Kim, interrupted. You've spent the better part of 2 years positioning this deal as essential to our growth strategy. The market analysts are already asking questions about our leadership stability. Marcus felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with corporate combat, the sharpening of focus that had made him successful. But underneath it was something new, a nagging awareness of Grace and Eleanor, probably napping in their cribs while Sophia managed their care alone. Our leadership stability is not in question, Marcus said firmly. One failed deal does not define Steel Industries or my ability to guide this company. One failed deal that you've been distracted from for weeks, Hartwell replied. Marcus, I've worked with you for 8 years. I've never seen you miss strategic details or seem unprepared for crucial negotiations. What's changed? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Marcus could feel the board's collective attention focusing on him, waiting for an explanation that would either restore their confidence or confirm their worst fears about his commitment. "I've had some personal circumstances that required attention," Marcus said carefully. "Personal circumstances more important than a $2.4 billion deal?" Sarah Kim's voice was sharp with disbelief. Marcus thought about his daughters' faces, about Sophia's exhausted beauty as she fed them at dawn, about Eleanor's fierce pride in her new granddaughters. Were they more important than $2.4 billion? 3 weeks ago he would have said no without hesitation. Now, the answer felt obvious in a way that would be impossible to explain to this room full of people who'd built their lives around quarterly profits and market dominance. "Yes," he said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could see the board members exchanging glances, the subtle communications that preceded corporate coups. He'd sat in similar meetings when other CEOs had lost their edge, had watched boards decide that leadership changes were necessary for shareholder protection. "Marcus," Hartwell said finally, his tone more gentle than before, "perhaps you need to take some time. Deal with whatever personal issues you're facing, refocus on what's important." "What's important," Marcus said, "is my family." Another silence, this one even more charged than the last. Marcus realized that he'd just declared his priorities to a room full of people who'd invested billions in his single-minded devotion to profit. They were looking at him like he'd announced a religious conversion or a mental breakdown. "Your family," Sarah Kim repeated slowly. "My daughters. Twin daughters born 3 days ago." The shock on their faces would have been comical under other circumstances. Marcus Steele, the workaholic bachelor who'd famously said that family was a luxury he couldn't afford, had not only acquired a family but was declaring it his top priority. "Congratulations," Hartwell said cautiously. "But Marcus, surely you understand that personal responsibilities can't supersede your fiduciary duty to this company and its shareholders." "My fiduciary duty remains unchanged. But my methods may need to evolve." "What does that mean exactly?" Marcus looked around the table at these men and women who'd supported his vision, trusted his judgment, and made fortunes following his lead. They deserved honesty, even if it cost him everything he'd spent 15 years building. "It means I'm not the same man I was a week ago. It means I'm going to find ways to run this company effectively while being present for my children. It means that 3 a.m. crisis calls and weekend emergency sessions may not always be possible. And if that impacts our competitiveness, our market position," Sarah Kim demanded, "then we'll adapt. We'll build systems that don't depend on my personal availability 24 hours a day. We'll delegate more effectively, trust our executive team more completely, and create sustainable leadership structures." It sounded reasonable when he said it, but Marcus could see the skepticism on their faces. They'd built Steel Industries on his relentless availability, his willingness to sacrifice everything for the next deal, the next acquisition, the next level of growth. Asking them to trust a version of him that prioritized bedtime stories over board meetings was asking them to bet their fortunes on a fundamental personality change. "Marcus," Hartwell said finally, "I think you need to seriously consider whether you can be both the CEO this company needs and the father you want to be." The words hit like a physical blow because they echoed Marcus's own deepest fears. Could he do both? Could he be the kind of father Eleanor and Grace deserved while maintaining the ruthless focus that running a global corporation required? "I'm going to try," he said quietly. "And if you can't? If something has to give?" Marcus thought about Sophia's words that morning, about his daughters watching and learning what mattered to their father. He thought about his own childhood, marked by his father's absence and his mother's quiet disappointment. He thought about the life he wanted to build versus the empire he'd already created. "Then I'll figure it out when that time comes." The meeting continued for another 2 hours, covering damage control strategies for the Shanghai situation and contingency plans for future negotiations. Marcus participated fully, his mind sharp and focused on the problems at hand. But underneath the familiar rhythm of corporate strategy, he was acutely aware of time passing. Time away from his daughters, time that Sophia was handling their care alone, time that his family was learning to function without him. By the time the meeting ended, it was nearly 4 o'clock. Marcus's phone showed 6 missed calls from his mother and 2 texts from Sophia. "Girls are fine. Your mother stopped by with lunch." And an hour later, "Eleanor fussy this afternoon. Maybe getting sick?" The second message sent a spike of anxiety through Marcus that was completely disproportionate to the actual threat. Babies got fussy for dozens of reasons, most of them completely normal. But the thought of his daughter being unwell while he sat in a conference room discussing market positioning made him feel like a failure as a father. He was heading for the elevator when Patricia intercepted him with another crisis. "Marcus, I have Chin Corporation online too. They want to discuss terms for a possible collaboration on the manufacturing facilities we lost in the Yamamoto deal." The irony was perfect. The company that had stolen his deal was now offering him a lifeline. Marcus looked at his watch, thought about Sophia dealing with a fussy baby alone, and felt the familiar tug of competing responsibilities. "Schedule it for tomorrow morning," he said. "Sir, they're only available today. Their CEO is flying back to Hong Kong tonight." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. Take the call and potentially salvage something from the Shanghai disaster, or go home to his family and risk losing another crucial opportunity. Transfer the call to my cell. I'll take it from the car. The ride home became an hour-long negotiation session, Marcus's driver navigating Manhattan traffic while he hammered out preliminary terms for a partnership that could restore steel industry's Asian expansion plans. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes, time-sensitive deal that had defined his career, the kind that required complete focus and strategic thinking. But even as he negotiated manufacturing quotas and profit-sharing arrangements, part of his mind was on Eleanor's fussiness, on whether Sophia had eaten lunch, on whether his daughters were wondering where their father had gone. The call ended just as his car pulled up to his building. Marcus had secured a framework agreement that could potentially be even more profitable than the original Yamamoto deal, but he felt no satisfaction in the victory. Instead, he found himself taking the elevator to his penthouse with the anxiety of a man who'd been absent from his family for far too long. The apartment was quiet when he entered, soft classical music playing from speakers in the living room. Marcus followed the sound to find an unexpected scene. His mother sitting in the leather armchair by the window, Grace sleeping peacefully in her arms, while Sophia lay on the couch with Eleanor against her chest, both of them dozing in the afternoon sunlight. It was domestic and beautiful and completely foreign to the sterile perfection his penthouse had maintained for years. "They're fine," Eleanor whispered, noticing his arrival. Eleanor was fussy earlier, but it turned out she just needed a longer nap. Overstimulation, according to Dr. Morrison. James was here. He stopped by on his lunch break. Very attentive young man. Eleanor's tone was carefully neutral, but Marcus caught the subtext. His mother had noticed James's devotion to Sophia and approved of the attention Marcus's family was receiving in his absence. Marcus moved quietly to the couch, settling beside Sophia's sleeping form. Eleanor, his daughter, was curled against her mother's chest, tiny fist curled near her face, completely peaceful. The sight of them together, mother and child in perfect harmony, made his chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. "How did the meeting go?" Sophia asked softly, not opening her eyes. "The Shanghai deal is dead, but we may have found an alternative partnership. Different structure, but potentially more profitable." "And how do you feel about that?" Marcus considered the question. 12 hours ago he would have felt triumph at turning a disaster into opportunity, satisfaction at his ability to think strategically under pressure. Now, looking at his sleeping daughter, all he felt was regret at having missed her afternoon of fussiness, at not being there when she needed comfort. "Like I was in the wrong place," he admitted. Sophia's eyes opened, meeting his with an expression he couldn't read. "The wrong place." "She needed me and I was in a conference room talking about market positioning." "Marcus, she's fine. Babies get fussy. It's normal and it doesn't require both parents to be present every moment. But I wanted to be here. I wanted to know what was wrong, to help figure out how to make her feel better." Eleanor, his mother, smiled from her chair. "That, my dear boy, is what makes you a father." Before Marcus could respond, Grace began to stir in Eleanor's arms, making the soft sounds that meant she was waking up hungry. The evening routine began with practiced efficiency. Bottles warmed, diapers changed, the domestic choreography that had become the rhythm of their temporary life together. But as they settled into feeding time, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted during his day away. Sophia was more distant, his mother more observant, and he felt like he was playing catch-up in his own family. "Sophia," he said as Grace nursed contentedly in his arms, "we need to talk about today." "Do we?" "I know you're angry that I left for the meeting." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, focusing on Eleanor's feeding with careful attention. "I'm not angry, Marcus. I'm realistic." "What does that mean?" "It means today was exactly what I expected. A crisis at work, an emergency that required your immediate attention, hours away from home while I handled everything here. It's the pattern we lived with for 3 years of marriage. But I came back. I took the call from the car instead of staying at the office for another 4 hours of meetings. You took a call from the car, Sophia repeated. An hour-long business call while driving home to your sick daughter. Marcus felt defensive heat rise in his chest. She wasn't sick, she was fussy. And the call was important. It could save the Asian expansion plans. And that's exactly the problem. Sophia's voice was calm but final. Eleanor could have been seriously ill, and you still would have taken that call because the business always comes first. It has to, in your world. I understand that, but I can't live with it again. Eleanor, his mother, cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps I should give you two some privacy. No, Sophia said quickly. Stay. You should hear this too, since it affects the girls. Marcus felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Sophia, what are you saying? I'm saying that this arrangement isn't working. Not because you're not trying, but because you can't change the fundamental reality of who you are and what your life requires. I can change. I am changing. Are you? Or are you just trying to add fatherhood to your existing life without giving up anything that actually matters to you? The question hit too close to home. Marcus thought about his day, the board meeting he'd felt compelled to attend, the negotiation he'd conducted from the car, the constant pull of responsibilities that had nothing to do with his daughters but everything to do with his identity. What do you want me to do, Sophia? Quit. Walk away from everything I've built? I want you to want to, she said simply. I want you to look at our daughters and know, without hesitation, that they're more important than any deal, any crisis, any opportunity that might come up. They are more important. Then prove it. How? Sophia looked at him with eyes that held years of disappointment and hope in equal measure. Choose them, Marcus. Not just when it's convenient, not just when there's no competing priority, but always. Choose them when it costs you something, when it means saying no to opportunities, when it means admitting that being their father is more important than being a billionaire. Marcus felt the weight of the challenge, the impossibility of the choice she was presenting. She was asking him to fundamentally redefine himself, to become a person who could walk away from the life he'd spent 15 years building. And if I can't? If I don't know how to be that person? Then we'll figure out a co-parenting arrangement that works for everyone. The girls will have a father who loves them and provides for them, and I'll have the certainty of knowing what to expect. Eleanor, his mother, spoke for the first time in several minutes. Sophia dear, change takes time. Marcus is trying. I know he's trying, Sophia interrupted gently. But trying isn't enough anymore. I can't build a life around hoping that Marcus will become someone different. The girls deserve stability, consistency, parents who put them first without hesitation. I do put them first, Marcus protested. Today you put a business call first. Tomorrow it will be something else. There will always be another crisis, another opportunity, another reason why work has to take priority. Marcus looked down at Grace, who had finished eating and was looking up at him with those unfocused baby eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. Could he promise that there would never be another day like today? Could he guarantee that his daughters would always come first no matter what? The honest answer was no. He couldn't make that promise because he wasn't sure he was capable of keeping it. I don't know how to be a different person, he admitted quietly. I know, Sophia said, and her voice was full of sadness and understanding. And that's why this can't work. The silence that followed felt final, like the closing of a door on possibilities Marcus hadn't even realized he wanted. He'd found his daughters, found his way back to the woman he loved, and he was losing them both because he couldn't figure out how to be someone other than who he'd always been. So what happens now? He asked. Now we make plans for co-parenting. Legal arrangements, financial support, custody schedules. We do what's best for Eleanor and Grace, even if it's not what we wanted for ourselves. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. Not his heart exactly, but something deeper and more fundamental. The future he'd begun to imagine, the family he'd thought they could build, was slipping away because he couldn't let go of the past that had made him successful and lonely in equal measure. I love you, he said suddenly. I love you and I love them and I don't know how to choose. I love you too, Sophia replied. But love isn't always enough. Eleanor, his mother, stood up carefully, still moving with the caution of someone recovering from serious injuries. I think, she said with quiet dignity, that you're both making this more complicated than it needs to be. Both Marcus and Sophia looked at her with surprise. Marcus, dear, you're treating this like a business decision, all or nothing, complete transformation or total failure. But parenting isn't a corporate restructuring. It's a daily choice made over and over again, to put your children's needs above your own convenience. She moved to the window, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the evening darkness. And Sophia, you're asking for guarantees that no parent can give. Do you think your brother Michael never made mistakes? Never chose poorly, never put other priorities first occasionally? The difference isn't perfection, it's commitment to getting back up and trying again. Marcus felt a flicker of hope at his mother's words, but Sophia's expression remained skeptical. Eleanor, with respect, Michael didn't have a $47 billion empire demanding his attention. The stakes are different. Are they? Eleanor turned back to face them. Or are you both so afraid of failing that you're not willing to try? Before either of them could respond, both babies began crying simultaneously, the tired, hungry wails that marked the end of their patience with adult conversation. The sound cut through the emotional tension in the room, demanding immediate attention from parents who were trying to figure out how to be parents together. Marcus and Sophia moved instinctively toward their daughters, the practiced choreography of the past few days taking over despite the uncertainty between them. As they worked together to soothe and feed the babies, Marcus felt the rightness of it, the way they functioned as a team when their children needed them, the natural partnership that emerged when everything else fell away. Maybe his mother was right. Maybe this didn't have to be all or nothing, success or failure, complete transformation or total defeat. Maybe it could be something messier and more human, a daily choice to do better, to learn from mistakes, to prioritize love over fear. But as he looked at Sophia's face while she fed Eleanor, he saw the wall that had gone up between them, the protection she'd built against hope and disappointment. Winning her back wouldn't be a matter of grand gestures or perfect choices. It would require something much harder, becoming someone worthy of her trust, one day at a time, one choice at a time, for as long as it took. The question was whether he had the courage to try and the patience to fail repeatedly until he got it right. Outside the window, the city hummed with the energy of 8 million people making their own choices about love and work, family and ambition, the dreams that sustained them and the fears that held them back. Somewhere in that vast tapestry of human experience, Marcus had to believe there was a way to be both the father his daughters deserved and the man he'd worked so hard to become. He just had to find the courage to discover who that person might be.